Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to be talking about when you have no family to rely on, family of origin, and how this can really impact you, particularly for women that I see in this situation, but relates to men as well. So before that, please do subscribe. The most recent subscriber episode was on highly sexual women and alpha males, the two types of people that people most seem to think that they want, and do you really want this, and what would it really be like? Okay, so you should subscribe to hear that and close to 100 other episodes that are subscriber only. Okay, so when you have no family of origin that you can rely on to help you, this is particularly difficult for women who are more frequently the primary caretaker. So what this really means, it's like really kind of a different species to be a parent that has family help and to be a parent that doesn't. It's like a totally different life experience. The parenting experience is just colored so dramatically by either having somebody to rely on or not. And I hear lots of stories of people, and men generally tend to work full time even when the kids are young. So this is particularly relevant for women that are at least part of the time stay at home. It can be very, very lonely to be a stay-at-home parent. And it is having your mom in specific around can really make that a totally different experience. One where you know there's always an extra set of hands, where you know if you have to, like, let's say, go to the dentist as an emergency appointment, like somebody who's always going to take your kids. You can take a break and go yourself, which doesn't sound like a break, but of course it is for parents. You know, you can do like all manner of things, you know? I mean, when you have an involved parent, you have somebody to watch the kids for date night. Like, you can, of course, have a full-time nanny if you can afford that, but very few people can afford that. And many women are introverted and really don't want that around, you know, like they don't want to have to hire somebody who sits in the house with them, even if they had unlimited money, which is something a lot of guys can't understand, especially guys that are in the higher power jobs like finance. Maybe they're a doctor. They make a lot of money, and they frequently have peers whose wives do want full-time help, and so they can't understand why their wife doesn't. Well, I have a post about this called "Why Your Wife Doesn't Want to Outsource Childcare," and I talk about this a lot. If women are more highly sensitive or they're more introverted, it's more stressful for them to sit there with somebody else in the house constantly than to be alone, because that other person isn't somebody that they feel close to and that they love. Like, there's really no replacing having like a close family member. I mean, I guess you could have like a close friend that doesn't have a job that just wants to hang out with you and your kids, but I mean, most people don't have that. I would have never heard about that before. You know, some people have their sister, so the sister is in the mother role in this situation. Some people have a father that's retired and very available for help. That's great. Whatever it is, if you have this person in your family so let's say even if they don't live close, there's somebody who you know if there was an emergency, they would come and stay with you. That really takes a mental, like, that takes some of the mental load. People are always talking about the emotional load. If you have a parent that's involved that can give support with child rearing, and also possibly even somebody that's kind to you and is nice to you and says that you're being a good parent. But either way, even if they're kind of a dick, even if they're just there, and they can always kind of be called in case of an emergency, then you have something that a lot of people don't have. When people don't have that, especially if they already struggle with depression, anxiety, or overwhelm, this makes it a million times worse. You know, and like especially young moms, young women, they look at other people who say, oh, my mom came and she cleaned everything and she made soup and you know, the kids just love hanging out with her. She's a little annoying because like she asked me why I'm wearing the shirt shirt that I was wearing. But, like, I don't know, like, it was a little annoying, but, it is still helpful overall. Like, the people who have no family help are like, what the hell? Like, that you're so lucky. So there's a lot of envy among people who even aren't envious generally. There's a lot of envy among moms, especially moms of young kids, directed toward the majority, because it is the minority who has no contact with supportive family. But so it's envy of the majority situation where a mom would have her own mom or some family member to call, and or could consider moving back home, where then there would be help on offer, etc. So for the people that are pretty estranged or have parents with mental illness, such that they really cannot help at all or be relied on, or who struggle with tremendous anxiety, PTSD, narcissistic or borderline traits, it's like you just don't have backup. And a lot of husbands do not really understand what this does to the wife in particular, and why she's kind of always up their ass to be around in ways that their friends, the friends' wives don't really need them around as much, because the friends' wives usually just have to ask one question to the guy if he knows anything about his friends at all. So let's say I got a couple in counseling and the woman has absolutely nobody to rely on, and the guy says, well, I don't know why you're bothering me about this hunting trip, because a hunting trip is 3 days and all my buddies can do it. And I say, who helps your buddies' wives, Do they have moms around? And if they even do a little cursory due diligence, they'll frequently find that, yes, they do, that the wives do have family around. And this is like a usual thing for many people. It'll be normative for many of you listeners that when a spouse travels, there is filling in from family, especially if it's extended travel for like a few days or for a week, and the children are young, like babies, toddlers, etc. So, or the woman's pregnant and has a baby, or, a toddler or whatever. And so men sometimes do not realize how much of a hole this leaves in the woman's life, and how then dissimilar the situation really is. Because especially if a woman is sensitive and struggles with postpartum depression or anxiety, which is a lot of people, she will feel completely alone and very scared about being the only one who could potentially, do anything with any of the kids. Then if she loses her sleep because they're up all night or they get sick, then she feels that she can't function. And when he's gone, it's not a situation where there's anybody else then to step in. And this can be very upsetting and anxiety producing, and then it can lead to a lot of fights. So where the woman is like, why do you leave me? Why do you leave me? And it isn't even really that she's the preoccupied attachment partner. It's more, she generally is in this case, but it isn't about that then. It's like fear. It's like anxiety ramps up to the point that, you're going to, like, a kid's going to get sick, and then you're still going to have to get to work. And then how are you going to navigate it? When you have your work and then you have to get to here, because this is also for women that work. Or you're going to have to pick one up here, but then one is going to be sleeping, and then the other one has a croup. And how do you deal with one with the croup when you got to pick up one at dance and whatever? Like, there's just a lot of logistical stuff. Men nowadays in this generation are getting a lot better with that in terms of, splitting a lot of the pickups and the chores and like all of these things. But I also see a lot of women where this was their situation when they were younger, and they still have a lot of unresolved empathic ruptures where they felt completely alone navigating the travails of young parenthood, and the guy was just at work / doing his hobbies. Doesn't mean that he didn't need to make money. He did. But a lot of guys do not understand how alone and how panicked the woman felt, because she wasn't really able to articulate it. Because remember, in these times, the woman is also trying to tell herself that she's a good mother and that she can deal with things and she can do it on her own, because of course she has to. So she may not be, acting as completely over the top, dramatically alone and abandoned as she feels, because she doesn't want to act, quote, crazy. This, you could refer back to the Mr. Perfect and his crazy wife. This is frequently a dynamic that happens here, where you have the husband who kind of doesn't really understand why the wife is so scared of being alone. He doesn't really realize how alone she really is compared to the majority of, women and moms who have someone to call. Now, there's sometimes a situation, and I work with this with women a lot, and it can be very useful, where the woman doesn't really love her in-laws, but she has like none of her own family. So she kind of tries to do everything on her own because she doesn't necessarily like the in-laws so much. But that doesn't kind of matter. Like, what matters, like, it doesn't really matter if you like love the in-laws so much if they can help. I work with a lot of women, opening them up to the idea of accept the help that you have. You don't have to love the in-laws. You have to like get through your life and parent these children. And if there's any help on offer from anybody who is not just completely unhinged, then yeah, you probably want to open yourself up to taking it. Sometimes women have a lot of ambivalence about this. Having their in-laws around, in fact, makes them feel worse, because it like reminds them that there are involved parents in the world. So in a sense, they are very sadly cutting off their nose to spite their face by, denying the in-laws like the ability to help more regularly and more spontaneously. So, for example, there are women that, wish that they had a mother they could call to say, oh, can you please, wait with Sally while I take Joey to the doctor? But their mother-in-law would do that, but they won't call their mother-in-law because they don't really like her. She's not that nice. That's the ostensible reason, and maybe she's not very nice. But the deep reason is that it makes them feel like too bad kind of about their situation, that like they have no mom, so they have to like use this other mom, their husband's mom, and they don't really want to do that. It just brings up so much shit in their mind. And therapy honestly can really help with really reframing that and grieving the loss of the family that you do not have rather, and then being much more rational and objective about accepting help where you can get it. And I've worked with a lot of women on that, and it's very it's honestly very transformative to change your frame on that one. But there's also the women, as I'm discussing, who this is in the past. The children are older now. Maybe they do have help now. Maybe they don't need help now because the kids are teenagers or even out of the house, and they just can't forget that feeling of being completely alone and having no backup, and then feeling an empathic rupture with the husband about that. And that stuff is what couples counseling can be very useful for, is helping the man understand, yeah, of course, everybody was alive and your wife handled it well, but at the time she felt that she was drowning completely alone and grieving the loss of a helpful parent, who could help her, in these situations where you also want your mommy, because you feel completely overwhelmed, but you just don't have one, and you have to be mommy to your kids without a mommy. And that's a sad situation. And it is one that many people find themselves in when the parents, again, struggle with mental illness and or dead, estranged, etc. All right, well, I hope that this gave you a little bit of a different perspective on this situation. Now, if you are in a situation like this and you are the guy listening to this, because I have 50% of male listeners, and you realize that maybe you have not really thought deeply about how hard it may have been for your wife to not have an involved mother or parents or anyone, then you can go to her and be like, I may have misjudged this situation and thought that kind of everybody, did it on their own. And now when I think about it, maybe a lot of women were doing it with family help. And that's how, my buddies were able to travel so much for work, or travel for our golf outing, or our, hunting, or our, fishing, or what have you. And maybe I underestimated how hard those times were for you. Either way, I really am impressed that you were able to do it on your own. Now that I'm thinking about that, maybe most people were not. Maybe most women weren't doing it on their own. So there's no woman alive in that situation who would not want to hear that and feel more validated by, by the husband acknowledging that. Never be scared to bring up a topic, like it's not like she's going to rethink everything and be madder at you. Like it's much, much, much more likely that she is very mad and sad about that time, and this would open up a potential avenue toward validation and reconciliation. That's a hell of a lot more likely than that she'll be like, why, until you brought that up, I felt completely fine, and now I'm going back and rethinking everything in this marriage, and you're right, I'm leaving you. Come on, that doesn't happen. All right, hopefully you got something out of this. It is very hard to be on your own, and it is very hard to be in the world without a supportive family of origin. Therapy really does help with that. The you need to reparent yourself. You need to grieve what you don't have and be basically your own support system, in addition to, of course, utilizing those that you have around you, such as a spouse, possibly their family, friends, therapists, etc. So think about that too. Maybe your partner is totally supportive during this time, but you yourself, it's very hard for you to get past the fact that you're trying to be a mommy with no mommy, and that's hard. And it shouldn't be minimized. That is a very hard thing. All right, I will talk to everybody soon. Have a great day, guys.